We have our SME segment up next. Olushola Okodugha is the CEO of Creations Republic, which is a cutting-edge marketing communications company based right here in Lagos. The venture was funded to help businesses and nonprofits and governments tell their stories and project their works to the public through branding and advertising. Now, to explain a lot more on this is the CEO himself. Now, when I heard the CEO was coming, I was expecting an older guy, a more buff, more robust
But don't I look
person.
older?
No, you don't. You look very
Okay.
young to
I am actually.
started and put together a company like this. So let's just explain to people what the business is all about.
Okay, so this is a service business. It's called Creations Republic, and we're into PR, advertising, public relations, which I said earlier, branding, and also communication strategies. And what we basically do is to help nonprofits. We help the government and also the private sectors to sort of like tell their stories, especially marketing communications departments of each of this organization that I mentioned. And we just sort of like use that to tell their stories, create their brand identity, and of course do their social media and their communication strategies for the company. So that's what we basically do.
All right. So a lot of people, when they hear of an SME or they hear of a small business, they don't think about a company like yours. They think of someone who's either buying or selling.
Yeah.
Right, but you are considered an SME.
Oh, yes.
What's your staff strength like?
So right now, we have about 6 people working with us.
Okay.
We have 2 contracts, but people who work with us full-time, about 6. And it's been amazing. I mean, getting the people to be a part. You know, one of the things that I realize is that many times a lot of people do not want to work with what they call a one-man business, and especially SMEs. They feel like, oh, what's the hope for them? You know, things like that. But it's been challenging so far. But of course, it has its own ups and it has its own down, and of course, has its own good side, which is when the money shows up in the bank account.
Hopefully, it does regularly.
Hopefully.
So this means that you had to have had a very strong vision before you could even bring people on board to join you. What was that, the vision all about?
So first, I was working in a company before, and I worked there. I'd worked for about 5 to 6 years before, and I was just tired. I was tired of waking up very early by 6 a.m. and going out to the island every time I leave on the mainland, and I'll have to drive down and there'll be traffic and I won't get to work until like sometimes 9:30, and my boss will yell at me and say all of those things. And I was just tired, especially the traffic and all of those things. So after a while, I said to myself, you know what, this is what I've been doing for a long time. I think it's about time for me to, you know, start my own business and see the opportunities out there. And so I just moved and I decided to do it. It was not easy like it's sounding right now, because it was a lot of mental, you know, thought and thinking through the process. And basically, I just wanted to create a brand that would help bring solutions for SMEs like myself, and also corporate organizations like other people. And so I just felt like, you know what, let me just do this. So I started out with myself first. It was only me. And I was the accountant, I was the lawyer, I was the HR,
Wow.
and I started in my house, you know. And sometimes my wife would be the cook because I would stay at home, she would bring food to me. Wow. And sometimes, because she studied accounting, and sometimes she would also help me, you know, do my accounting issues and all of that. And eventually we added a staff, you know, I brought in someone, and the person worked with me for about 6 months and he left because after a while we couldn't pay, you know, and so he left. And then later I sat down with a mentor and walked through my business plans, and eventually started adding on people. So what I think people buy in is the product, what we want to sell for people, the possibilities of doing something new that is different, especially in the marketing communication space. And I think when people hear that side, you know, people who are working with us, they feel like, okay, this is good, let me be a part of it. You know, of course, their salaries also is actually important to them.
I can see that you're smiling through this now. I can imagine what a challenging journey it's been like. Sorry, the name of the business one more time?
Creations Republic.
Creations Republic. I wanted to say Creatives Republic.
Okay, no, it's
I didn't want to get it wrong. Creations Republic sounds really, really interesting. But I know that there must have been some bumps in the road along the way. I would love to hear one of your stories with regard to getting investors, getting people to infuse money into your business. Tell me what's
Okay,
happened.
so at the time I left the company I was working, I was earning quite okay. I mean, quite well. And like I said, I was tired of just, the 9-to-5 life. And sometimes by the end of the month, before the end of the month, the salary is over and you have to. So I wanted something that would, sort of like come steady for me. And so I just decided to start the business. And I had some funds with me to start the business. And again, the good side of my business is that it's a service business. So I'm not selling products. So I didn't get an investor.
Okay.
Of course, I spoke to a few friends. I spoke to one of family and friends to sort of see, hey, I'm starting my business. How do you guys want to support? And sometimes they would say, oh, we're going to support you through prayers. So the best I got was support through prayers, no support financially.
Wow.
But it was just basically, I remember the first job I got, which was like a big job. The first job I got was about 60K.
Wow.
And at that time, it was like, oh my God, 60K, I'm going to stay on this SME walk, because at that time, it was actually big money for me, even though, and there was a time I went about 2 months without getting any, any contract or any job. It was that time I told my, and interestingly, I was about getting married at the time. So I told my then fiancé and my wife now that, you know what, I'm going back to paid employment.
Wow, okay.
Because this is not working. But I just stayed there, just hoping that things were going to work eventually. And thank God, looking back now, I'm glad.
Wow. So there was never a point where you said, you know what, did you actually give your CV out at any point?
Well, I rewrote the CV. I didn't give it out. So I wrote it somewhere and I just kept it there and saying, you know what, if this thing is not going to work, I'm going to give myself 2 months. If this thing is not going to work, I'm going to go back. But for some interesting reason, I just felt that there's something more here, there's no going back. How do I tell people that, okay, there was no just going back for me. So it's either it was going to work. But I think looking back now, there are certain things I should have learned. Before I started being an SME, I just jumped into it. I just bumped myself into it. But now, looking back now, I'm knowing that, okay, there are certain things I should have done better, which would have helped me in those seasons to understand the flow, that is not, I mean, I was used to the salary life, so. Yeah.
I want to talk a bit about your customers now, your clients. And I know that clients all have their own differences. So do you have any clients that have given you serious challenges? And how have you been able to manage them?
So I don't know if I'm okay to say this on the air, but
don't mention their names.
No, I'm not going to mention the client's name.
Yeah.
But I realized that the big clients don't give you problem.
Really?
They don't.
Oh, okay.
And they pay well. They don't give you problem. But you see, the ones that pay you
small money.
They want you to resume in their house. They want you to resume in their house. They will call you the money. Do you know how much I've paid you? They give you serious problems,
Wow.
And managing clients is a lot of work because of our type of business. They don't want to relate with your staff. They don't want to talk to somebody else in your company. They want to talk to the CEO. They want the CEO to attend to their briefs. They want the CEO to come for presentations. Even when you send your staffs over for presentations and consulting, they'll say, no, they don't want, they'll send the staff back and tell you have to come. Even if you're out of town, you have to come and meet them. And so the demand is quite much. And also, when you have maybe little challenges in the business or the project you're doing, they expect that you get it fixed in time and things like that. And of course, at the same time, sometimes people even go, another way talking to you in ways that you would never even take. But of course, because they're your clients and you want to keep them, you just say, yes, ma, yes, sir.
So in your version of events now, is the customer always right?
Well, if they are watching me on air right now, yes, they are always right. Forever, they will be right. If they are.
But there's never a situation where you've had to tell your customer, you know what, sir, ma, this is not going to happen.
There was one time I had to, send a letter from our company saying that I don't think we should continue.
Wow.
This relationship because...
You actually had to send that?
Oh, yeah, I had to. And this person is a friend, so it wasn't like... Yeah, and I realized that it wasn't just working. So it was just the right thing to do. Just send a letter and say, sir, you know what, I'm not sure this would work because some of the things you're expecting. So the way it works, they give you a project to do maybe communication advisory or communications plan for a campaign. And they want you to do HR work in the process.
Wow.
So it's not clearly stated. And you're trying to say that this is not what we agreed. This is the brief. And they're saying, no, we've paid you. We've paid you. You should. And I'm like, no, this is not what we agreed. So that's a major problem with the service business, because sometimes it's not totally spelled out. It's more or less you have to do it this way to do it that way for it to work. So yes, I had to do that one time.
Wow.
And I don't plan to do it ever again.
Okay, but the fact that you were able to share that with us, there's probably someone listening right now that needed to hear that, because they've probably been battling with one client or the other and it's just not working. Because I do believe that if you waste time with that client, you're not getting anywhere and you're still exhausting your resources at the same time.
Absolutely.